Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Serial Entrepreneur Podcast. Today I'm joined by Gillian Palmer, Managing Director of Lending Made Simple and founder of the Finance Hub. The Finance Hub is a collective of independent expert financial service advisors, all committed to providing honest, intelligent and accessible advice. So welcome to the podcast today, Gillian.
Good morning, Anna. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we always begin with our signature icebreaker question, which is, what's your favourite breakfast cereal and why?
I don't eat cereals anymore. When I did, granola was my favourite one. I'm a boring old protein person now and I eat eggs. So you might have to change it to protein.
Yeah, to be fair, a lot of people recently have said, they don't eat cereal anymore. And they'll be like, oh, but I do like to eat a full English breakfast. It's like, fair enough. I don't even eat cereal for breakfast. I just have it as a snack. So
Dinner.
So could you introduce yourself and tell me a bit about your background?
Yeah, sure, indeed. So as I said, my name is Gillian Palmer. I own Lending Made Simple, which has been running for about 7 years now. And I launched a year and a half ago the Finance Hub. So I've had quite a varied career actually. So I was 20 years in photocopiers, started my career working for Xerox in London. And then I went on to build a Xerox dealership to about a 7 million turnover. We had offices in 2 cities and we had 42 staff. So quite a big organisation over 10 years. Sold up and moved back to the UK and kind of fell into the finance industry. And felt that, it was quite an outdated industry, really. And I do like a challenge. I felt that there were ways I could change it. So Lending Made Simple I'm a finance broker. I specialise in business loans and cash flow facilities for startups and growing businesses. I called it Lending Made Simple because I wanted to make it easy. People had gone to the bank, been declined for their finance, and felt a little bit disgruntled, and they really didn't need any more challenges, so they come to me to really make it easy to find the best finance for them. And really out of the back of that, I came up with the concept of the Finance Hub because I felt all areas of finance were probably as complex, and why not bring a collaborative group of experts into one room so people can get advice across the board in finance.
Yeah, definitely. Finance advice is usually very expensive to get, especially for startups where it's so vital to them, but it's so hard to access it a lot of the time.
Absolutely, and there's so many varied type of finance, and if you've never done it, I've been there, I've worn the t-shirt, and if you've never done it, you don't know what's available, and it's quite a complex market. You can go on the internet, you can. But you don't know, you don't understand it. So that was the idea, was to bring it all under one roof, that you can get the right advice.
So what would you say your mission is here at the Finance Hub?
So my motto is let's talk. So people don't come in here to be sold a product. So if you think of finance, there's so many different areas. In fact, I'm learning even more areas of finance. People are knocking on my door now saying, can I be part of the Finance Hub because I do a specific type of advice? And I think I didn't even know that existed. So there's so many different areas. And what people, say to me is, I go to a mortgage broker for one thing, I go to a pension, I go to inheritance tax for a different person, where they can come in here and talk about the whole, spill the beans on all of their worries and their concerns and where they need advice, and then we put in front of them the right advisors, and if, for instance, we don't have the right person under the Finance Hub, I will go out and find that person to make sure that the client gets the right advice, and then they can decide whether to take it or not. So our mission really is to offer the right services, and if people want to use them, then they can do.
And it just makes it so much more accessible for people who usually can't access things like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the feedback people give me is, if they go to one type of advisor, they feel, I've maybe been sold a product, where in here they're not, because they're given multiple options, and they can choose then, if they don't use any of them, they walk away, they're happy where they are, or to take advice from the individual advisors.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So what was your inspiration behind starting the Finance Hub?
Well, I think it was because the feedback I've got from my clients of Lending Made Simple, And the feedback was always, you really did make it simple. So, you know, there's a lot of jargon in finance, and people are scared and they don't understand. I don't find it complex. I don't find finance complex. And I did make it easy for my clients. And then they kept coming back to me saying, do you do mortgages? Do you do pensions? Do you know anybody who does a will? Do you know? And I just had a bit of a moment of madness in lockdown and thought, why not create a space where people can come? And as you can see from my office, I try to create a very different type of space, a place where people could feel comfortable and to really talk about the, you know, the most important things in their life, really, all under one roof. So that was the idea behind it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. The office is definitely very welcoming, and you can tell people would want to come here to get advice.
Thank you.
So how do you help startups with their finances?
Okay, so startups, you know, there's all sorts of levels of startups, really. Some of them I can help, some I can point in other directions. So there are things like startup loans, grants, and also private equity. So we are working with some private equity people. We hold a lot of events, education events here for people looking for these sort of facilities. Although we do tend to target accountants because people tend to go to their accountant for that advice. And we put on a lot of different types of, I said educational, we did one last week actually, for startups about credit management, because, you know, some people don't even know what that means. And when I built my photocopier business, I didn't know what that meant. I just knew how to sell photocopiers. I didn't know that we had to collect the money and we had to collect it on time, or the bills weren't paid or people weren't paid. And this is becoming really, really important at the moment, because if you want to fund your business in the long term, you know, the funders are going to ask, well, who's your client? What do your contracts look like? How are you collecting your money? So there's a vast area really where we can support startups, not only in the financial part of it. One of the other things that I work very closely with my clients on as well, even if they're starting up, even if I can't help them and I point them in the direction, is also then to talk them through the type of financial products that will be available when they get to a certain stage. Because at different stages of your business, and I deal with businesses from startup to, you know, probably my biggest client is about 20 million turnover. There's different finance needed at different stages. And for different industries, it's all very, you know, again, it's a different product. So I try to kind of, from a very early stage, educate them on what products may be available and what the funder are, you know, are going to be looking for at that stage, so they're prepared in advance.
And that also definitely means for them that they can forward plan and they can really think about where they're taking their business and how they're going to tackle their issues when they come to it, because they already have that knowledge.
And because what tends to happen, like when I grew my first ever business, I said, you don't know anything bar what you're good at, the product you sell, or, you know, is that until you get to that stage, and all of a sudden things like cash flow, which is always the big downfall in most businesses, and then you start looking around, and, you know, at that stage you're in panic mode, where if you're educated beforehand in what you're probably going to need, and also I think people feel when they get to that stage and there's a cash flow problem, they think they've done something wrong. They think they've failed, but they don't. Every business, every single business, at some stage, will have a cash flow issue, I believe. And it's just knowing what's available to you, so you can go and get it at the time, but also educating them on what to be doing. You know, what is the funder going to be looking for? What is that underwriter going to be looking at your business before you get there?
So you mentioned all the different types of help that startups can get. What are the different financing options for startups, and why is it not a one-size-fits-all approach?
The reason for not all one size is, you know, because it's industry based as well. Things like private equity, you know, that's quite a difficult one to get. You know, if you're pre-revenue, to get somebody to invest in your business. So you won't have a very, very strong case. You won't have probably something that, you know, invented something that nobody's ever invented before to get private equity before you even turn any revenue in your business. Startup loans, so that's a government backed scheme. We work with a company called Let's Do Business. We send our clients over to them, and that is up to 25,000 per director. So if there's 4 directors in the business, they can borrow up to 25,000 each. It's actually set at 6%, so it's quite a good rate in this day and age. Very, very good rate. And that can be spread over, I think it's up to about 5 years. Also there's grants. Now I don't specialise in grants at all because they tend to be your local government, so I will always point to people in the direction, depends on where the business is, for grants. But the alternative funding market, which is the market I mainly deal in, they generally will lend from about 3 months upwards. Some of them will lend directly to startups. So say for instance, if I've just recently got some lending for a startup who sell a product. They have invented furniture for student accommodation, which has to be very robust because they all get bashed up. And they have the end user, they have the customer already, they have the product, but they needed cash flow for the materials in order to be able to sell the product. So I was able to bring in an invoice finance company who, you know, as soon as they raised the invoice, they paid 90% of that in cash back into the business to allow them to buy more stock to make more stock. So there is funding out there. We also have some new funders come online who will deal with clients up to 3 months running, so they just need to have a little bit of history there, who will lend against buying of the raw materials. So take for instance, you're buying some widgets from China, the funder will pay for that invoice on your behalf and then allow you to pay that maybe back over 3, 6, 9, 12 months. So it allows you to get the stock in, sell it before you have to pay the money back. So there's, and these sort of funds are, you know, they change on a regular basis. There's new products to the market, and that's what I'm constantly looking out for my clients, is what products we can bring to the market, especially for startups.
Because there are so many options out there. Just to do research yourself can be really difficult because it's so overwhelming.
Yeah. And sometimes advertisement can be, you know, not so truthful.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and people apply then and they get turned down and they get disheartened. So it's good to use a broker to, you know, for that knowledge really.
Yeah, it's great to have an expert on your side that will know what is right and what isn't for them. So what are the different factors that a business has to consider when it comes to funding and finance?
I think, you know, the questions I would ask them is, what do you need the finance for? And if it's a short-term investment in the business, I would always suggest a short-term type of funding. If it's a long-term, and people say to me, well, I don't understand that. Well, take for instance, when I putting this office together, so things like the tables, the glass, the cupboards, you know, these are all long-term investments in my business, so you shouldn't use your cash flow today to fund that. So I would generally look at something like a 3 or 5 year loan, or for instance for this sort of product, an asset based loan, so a lease or a hire purchase on that. A short-term investment, I would say, is something like staff. So the cash flow to pay staff, wages, is more short-term in your business. So I would look at something more like an overdraft facility for that type of funding.
Okay. So how do you think a startup can be more money conscious?
I think budgeting. I think budgeting is key, which I'm probably the worst person in the world at it. When I put this office together, I spent a lot more money than I thought I was going to, and I think that is key as well. It will always be, I believe, in my experience, it will always cost you a lot more than you think. So try to budget and try to stay within those budgets. I would always suggest you sit down with an accountant first and work it out, because also on the other hand, when are you going to get that money back? In my experience, again, it does not come in as quick as you think it's going to. You say, oh, that's fine, 6 months, it's probably going to be a year. So planning and budgeting, and using experts like an accountant to make sure that you've done your homework before you start.
Yeah, Great. So what would you say are some of the highlights of your career?
It's been quite a few because I've had a bit of a varied career. But recently, I mean, you know, the concept of the Finance Hub was an absolute concept. And to actually bring it to where it is today. Even this office was a building site, didn't even have a floor. And I designed it, I project managed it while I was sitting here doing my business plan. And a year and a half on, and it's working like really, really well. So that was major achievement. This year I actually went for some awards, won Entrepreneur of the Year. I won Woman in Finance, which for somebody who's only 7 years in finance, I was quite chuffed with that. And then only yesterday I found out that I've been shortlisted for Woman in Business for the Business Awards Tunbridge Wells. So yeah, that was a big achievement. And then only a few weeks ago, myself and Natalie, my office manager, I'd never run a race in my life and decided to do a half marathon in London for the first one. Nearly didn't make it, but I got around, and that was a huge achievement, and we raised a lot of money for charity for that.
Congratulations on all your wins, very well deserved. And congratulations on the half marathon as well. I don't think I could do one.
No, I didn't think I was going to make it either.
So on the flip side, to highlight, what would you say have been some of the challenges that you've experienced in your career, and how have you managed to overcome them?
I mean, running a business is just almost a daily challenge. Yeah, you have to pivot. You know, I've been through recessions, I've been through COVID, and you have to just think on your feet at every stage. One of my biggest, I suppose, where I learned a lot from was my photocopier business. You know, so I had that for 10 years. 9 years, it was on the growth. It was absolutely fantastic, and I'm very much, I like a growing business. I don't like to be the one cutting costs and, you know, making my business smaller. And it was going wonderful, and in year 9 I had 250,000 bad debt. And it frightened the life out of me, and actually, if I think back, I probably had a breakdown from it. Went away with a few girls for a few days, and you know, came back a different person. Thought, you know, this is actually killing me. The stress was killing me, and I put the business on the market and I sold it. And I think the key in business is to make decisions and stick to them. And you know, and I do see people hanging on to businesses that you know, and I've had business that failed too. You know, it's not all been success. And I think it's being able to make that decision to say, you know, this is not going anywhere, or we need to make changes now. And you know, and analysing at every stage of that business. You know, making decisions and making things happen.
Yeah, that's something we often hear, that it's very much all about thinking on your feet. But once you've made that decision, you've got to commit to it. Otherwise, if you keep wish-washing around, nothing really gets done.
No, absolutely.
So you spoke about how you faced a lot of stress. How do you deal with that stress?
Wine. You know, I think I deal with it differently now. You know, I was in my mid-30s then. I was 50 this year. I think experience brings a lot. I don't get half as stressed now. But I think also now I spend a lot more time on myself. You know, I exercise a lot. You know, where in those days I just worked. And that does not make you happy. You know, you do have to spend. I love to travel. Said I go to the gym in the morning, 6 o'clock, when nobody knows me, no makeup on. You know, I don't have to answer. I don't have to think about anything, and it's having that time for yourself. And I think also, you know, being an entrepreneur is a very lonely place, and it's good to be honest and meet on a regular basis with other entrepreneurs, and you always feel better, you know, because you think you're the only one that has all these problems on their shoulder, and you're not. Every single business owner has these problems, so it's good to talk and be honest with people.
Yeah, especially as other entrepreneurs will have very similar experiences, and you're not talking to someone who doesn't have that same experience, so they'll also be able to tell you how maybe they got over a struggle in their business.
Yes, absolutely. And I still, you know, I still get very stressed, and I know that 3 o'clock in the morning when you wake up and you think, oh God, get a cup of tea because your brain's awake now, you know, because you're stressed over cash flow, or you're, you know, so yeah, it still does happen, but I think it's having better mechanisms to deal with it.
Yeah, definitely. It's really important to prioritise yourself, where sometimes all you want to do is work, because you know you're going to see results, but you're not going to see results if you're not caring for yourself.
Yeah, and I think working smarter rather than longer hours is key.
So what would you say are some of the most valuable lessons that you've learnt throughout your career?
I think, you know, when you're successful once, that's not always going to be the case going forward. You know, I've been successful, I failed. I've been successful, I failed. And it's just learning to get back up on your feet and get on with it, really.
I think resilience, really, and knowing that while something may not be great at one time, it will get better, especially if you put that work in to make it better.
Absolutely. I think positive attitude is key, and sometimes that's quite hard.
Yeah, definitely, especially when you're in one of those ruts and trying to get yourself out of it can be really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say motivates you to continue your career in the field?
Because I love what I do. You know, after 20 years in the photocopier industry, and I sold that business, I fell out in love with that industry, and I'm very much a 200% or a 20%er. There's nowhere in between. I'm black and white. And after I sold that business, I was consulting in that industry for quite a while, and it just would not get me out of bed in the morning. I have to really love what I do to get out of bed and do it at, you know, 200%, as I say. And I started looking for something that was going to give me that passion again. And when I was approached to go into finance, I was like, me? Finance? I have no experience in finance. I didn't come from this industry. And when I did my research, I thought, actually, this is really interesting. I think that, you know, I could, and I think actually my experience in business, you know, is more advantageous to my clients than probably my lack of experience from, let's say, working in a bank or something like that. And just sharing that with people, that knowledge, and then finding them the right finance to move to the next level. I just love it. I love it. You know, my clients have been with me for years and years, and I've watched them grow, and that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. That's why I love it.
That's great. And yeah, you have experience in other fields, which means that you can take what you learn from different parts of your career and use that to help other people be able to make their business successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I work with a lot of people. At the moment, there seems to be a lot of acquisitions going on, mergers. And because I've been there, and I know that's actually a really emotional thing to do, you know, so I even think for these startups now, and when I started the Finance Hub, I've already worked out my long-term goal, but I will do it very differently from when I did it the first time round, because it's like your baby, it's like your family, you know, it's quite an emotional thing then to go and sell it. So I'm talking to my clients about that from day one. What's your end game? You know, when you get there, this is how it's going to be, so prepare yourself. So my experience, I think, does add value to my clients.
Definitely. So what would you say the future holds for you? Do you have any big exciting plans coming up?
Of course. So yeah, there's big plans for the Finance Hub. I mean, I've invested my life savings. I've invested over £250,000 now. I sold my home in Dublin to fund this. I wouldn't have done that if I didn't think this has a massive opportunity. We're a year and a half in, and already it's you know, it's proven to be successful. You know, people are already knocking on my door to be part of it, so it's you know, it's getting the word out there. Really around Tunbridge Wells at the moment, Kent, but the plan is to take it throughout the UK. Could go further afield if we do, but also have big plans to make it a household name, and to give it a platform where families can manage everything financial within their family, and also make it easier for, you know, when the parents pass on, that the family have access to everything financial within the family. So big plans.
Those are big, exciting plans. So before we wrap up the podcast, is there anything else you wanted to mention?
I just think, you know, we run an event here called Make It Your Business, which is actually, it's a nationwide, it's a government-backed scheme, Make It Your Business. I just host it here. and it's for female entrepreneurs, and it's predominantly for people who are thinking about maybe starting up. You know, maybe, you know, they're not happy in their job, maybe they've given up their career to be a stay-at-home mum, and now they're thinking, God, I have this business idea. It's such an inspirational event. We always have about 50 people here, and we always have 4 speakers who are entrepreneurs. Some of them have built, you know, £100 million businesses. And I think, you know, attending things like that, you know, anybody who is looking at starting up, you know, ask for advice. Go and speak to people who have already been successful. Knock on their door, you know, because I've been speaking to some of these speakers at the Make It Your Business. And there was one lady came in here and she built a £100 million business, which launched the week after lockdown.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, you need to speak to her actually. And I've asked her to come in. I couldn't believe she gave me so much time and told her what I'm doing here. She's come in to see me twice. She's given me so much help. And I thought, God, you know, there's so many people out there who have been successful. If there's startups, people thinking about starting up, knock on the door, knock on my door, come in and see me, I'll talk to you, you know, and take advice from your peers, really.
Yeah, I think it also gives that sense of community where you were talking about being a founder can be lonely, but something like this you can find so many people to help you on your journey as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Gillian. It's been great talking to you.
Oh, thank you very much for coming down here and the team.
Yeah, so it's been great talking to you, and we're so excited to see where the Finance Hub goes now.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.